Can you talk a little bit about, you know, how you got into the music initially?
What do you mean, like got into the music, hip hop in general, like just the? I think it was just from, you know what it was? My first experience with hip hop, hearing the sound that we call hip hop now, that could be considered hip hop, it would have to be just listening to the radio. At the time it was WBLS, like Frankie Crocker, but he'd be playing joints from like Grover Washington Jr. and it just got that feel. Certain records just got the feel. You hear the break, oh, good times, chic, good times. You hear it, even if they's not being spun. You hear it in there, right? Then, you know, at the time we was young, we was like, I think I was something like 10, 11 years old, something like that, you know. And we used to, you know, go down the block, and a lot of our peoples had older brothers. So this is back when it was 2 turntables and cats had afros. And we used to look up to them like, oh, you know, go peeking down in the basement, like, oh, what they doing, you know? But I would never be able to really get on the wheels until it must have been like a year after, and they finally invited us down to try to just get on. You know what I mean? So that's my first experience with what we would call hip hop now. You know, Tramp, Otis Redding, spinning, you know, just seeing how the record feel when you spin it back, how the fader feel when you hit it, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Now, this is in Long Beach or Freeport or
yeah, this is in
else?
Long Island, Freeport, Long Island. You know, is where it first started, I would say.
And KMD started out as a graffiti crew?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was really like a crew, basically. Back then, we used to have crews that was just crews, you know what I mean, that would listen to music, maybe be artists in general, breakdancing, anything that was like, at the time, we didn't really categorize it like that. Anything that was fun. You know, a crew that you would walk home from school with, and that's just a crew, you know, and everybody in the crew might add one thing to it, or, you know, bring a different angle to it. So graffiti was like something that we just did, you know, doodling and art in general. You know, so yeah, it turned more into a graffiti crew first, and then the breakdancing came into it as that became more popular, you know. And then music was always there, hip hop was always there as far as the music aspect. And then, you know, it just turned out the hip hop part, sound wise, music wise, got more popular. And it started to be, you know, something that I guess we more practiced that more. And it became to where we was making tapes and took it from there.
How did you meet MC Search?
Oh, Big Search. Well, I met Search at a talent show. It was like a outdoor, you know how they be having those like an outdoor daytime party though. It's not even like a night party. It's like a fair, like you know, like a gathering in the community where, you know, people be selling different items and whatnot. But they had a stage, you know, where you know, they had singers and anybody could just go up there and do their thing. You know, I guess there was some kind of structure to it. But he had a performance that he was doing up there, you know. So I'm out there just wandering around checking out stuff and whatnot. And I was with my other partner and we peeped this cat. You know, really we heard him first before we seen him. Right. You know what I'm saying? Somebody was rhyming. So anytime somebody's rhyming, it's interesting. So it's like, oh, who rhyming? So then we peeped this dude. He up there doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? By himself, solo. So I think I met him later on that day, like, you know, through my man. My man knew him already. Then, you know, he introduced me to him. So that's when we met.
And how long before you met Search initially, rather, to when he actually asked you to appear with him on a record? Because you guys have been doing your thing, you know, amongst yourselves, developing your sound, working on demos for fun and things like that, right?
Yeah, that time we was just, time was funny back then. It's interesting, huh? You know what I mean? But it seemed like it was all within the same year.
Yeah.
From summer and around again to the next summer, maybe like 11 months after.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Well, the first record that you appeared on is with MC Search and P Nice for third bass. A hip-hop classic called The Gas Face. We hear a little bit of that?
Yeah, no doubt. I ain't heard that in a while.
All right, cool.
Hey yo, man, my label mate Don Newkirk, man. Step to him.
So what goes through your mind when you hear that now, after all this time?
Man, it's like a snapshot from back then. It was fun times back then, you know. You know, you could tell like there's a lot of humor and a lot of spontaneity, you know. Things got a lot, you know, nowadays I think things kind of got more serious with hip hop to where it's like it needs more of that. Wouldn't y'all agree? A little bit of humor, you know what I'm saying? It adds more of a, to me, that's how it was back then. And it was comfortable. It's not as tense, so everybody's not so hung up on who's the best. And, you know, it's more of a fun thing. So, yeah, man, you know, it's like a snapshot, like a, you know, old picture, you know what I'm saying?
But, you know, that said, you know, I think it's interesting because there is a lot of humor and a lot of looseness in a song like this. But yet, you know, you guys are actually saying some kind of profound stuff too, you know? And I think that was one of the trademarks, you know, more or less, or is one of the trademarks of what you do, especially so for like the KMD stuff, which you know, we'll get through in a second. But, you know, can you talk a little bit about Zev Love X? This was you before MF Doom. What's the relationship between Zev and Doom?
Well, really, I would say they both really exist simultaneously. So it's not like a change from one to the other one. It's more like one of them came more to the forefront now. You know what I mean? Like these are shifting positions. Like it still back to the whole character thing. You know, so Zev Love X still exists somewhere as that character. You just don't hear him too much right now. He's just playing the background out of the story, kind of like. So there's a lot of similarities, you know. But I made it to where I needed another way to get a different point across. You know what I'm saying? I think the Doom character is more, it's a little more serious, you know what I'm saying? More serious than Zev is. You know what I mean? It's a little more, a lot of people describe it as dark. I would say it's just a deeper hue, like a kind of more reflective, like he thinks deeper into things. Right. You know what I mean?
Well, Doom is gone through things that Zev hadn't gone through yet, though, you know, as well, right? I mean, Doom's perspective is going to be different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, art imitates life kind of thing. So it is loosely based on, you know, experiences. Of course, everything is going to be based somewhat on experiences, but at the same time, like I say, Doom always existed. It's just when was his chance to grab the mic and actually make that debut? You know what I'm saying?
You know, the other thing with Zev and the KMD era, you know, not to stay on it too long, but also represented something, you know, that was very prevalent at the time, which is 5% Nation and hip hop at the time, and you know those things. You and Brand Nubian, you know, were dubbed yourselves the God Squad. You know, it was a very interesting time for all that stuff to be so prevalent. You know, any reflections on that now, looking back?
Well, yeah, you know, really a lot of influence to put information and to get like different aspects of the culture into the music comes from influences like I would say like PE. And when they was, you know, we was heavily influenced by PE, BDP, you know, and they would speak on different things that you wouldn't really hear anywhere else besides maybe like, you know, an old gathering, like, you know, went to a gathering with an uncle or something like that. Or when you got the old timers sitting around just talking about back then. It's something that you would hear more from family members or like through passing of stories, like culturally, you know. So in order to keep that alive and to keep these messages out there for the youth, you know, we put it in the records, you know. It was kind of like unintentionally, kind of like just to be like PE, kind of like, you know, like if, oh, what'd he say? You know, oh, I remember that. What can I add on and drop a jewel about, you know? Or to be like how KRS used to come with different information that you wouldn't necessarily hear.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. but also adding this element of fun too, and playfulness.
Right.
I want to play a little bit of KMD. I'm actually going to play. Let's play something that's not one of the singles. Maybe the intro from the album because it kind of sets things up. Is that kind of cool? Is that cool with you?
Cool.
Okay. This is something from KMD's first album, Mr. Hood, which you can kind of tell may set the stage for some of the stuff that came after.
Let's enter this jewelry shop.
Come on, Mr. Pickle, man, hook it up. 14K Duff bracelet. Thanks. That was a fun record. Man. It's a fun record.
So, if anybody has heard this album, it's this Mr. Hood character is present through every skit. How can you talk a little bit about how this was all constructed? Because obviously this is the same source, it's the same voice from Mr. Hood, right? Where did you get this from? If you can talk about that, and how did it come together?
Yeah, ironically, the record is a language record, right? It was a Spanish language record. That, you know, when you travel to different countries, they have records where. And it was on vinyl where they'll repeat a phrase and then say it in the other language. But it was Spanish. It's funny that I'm here now, right? But it was from maybe like, that record was an old record. It was like, recorded in maybe the 60s, early 60s, right? And, I'm listening to the joint, I'm listening to the record. I'm noticing the phrases that he's saying. He's just saying some joints that's just funny phrases in general, Like, why would you even want to translate that? Like, I guess, at that time it was the way that the people spoke in like a slightly different way, So it was always funny to me listening to it. I just listened to the whole record, by itself with the Spanish translation on it. But then I noticed, you can even mix match words. Like, all right, edit there and kind of cut and paste different phrases in between it. So it started to be where I could see a storyline evolving out of it, something that matched what was going on in the current days, what's going on in the street. But based around this character, he's like a stiff, like he sounds like real like a corny old dude, but he's like a real thug, like hood dude. You know what I mean? So the whole record was based around us kind of schooling him from being, drug dealer type, just dropping little jewels on him and schooling him, bringing him into the crew kind of thing. And by the end of the record, we get him down. He gets it through his skull. He starts being more, like aware of what's going on, more conscious towards the end of the record. Right. Yeah.
It's funny because even just using that, Spanish instructional record, it generates this like vibe of inclusion. You know what I mean? That I thought was real unique to this record and to the group. Skipping to the next record, even though there are songs off of this album that were hits, this album was very well regarded, spawned a few hits, Peach Fuzz and Who Me, and things like that are in the same spirit. The next record you guys did is entitled Black Bastards. This was recorded a couple years later. This album, of course, for those who know, actually was not released when it was supposed to be released. But it has a different vibe that I think is really interesting. It's got a certain amount of, I don't want to say, a little more aggression in it musically, even though it still maintains a playful side of it. And I liken it in a lot of ways. I don't know if anybody else has said this to you, but all the groups that came out in this era, De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Brand Nubian, groups like this, came out with very, very acclaimed debuts. And a lot of them came back with a little bit more jaded sounding records, but yet classic records. And I feel this is one that is very much in the same league with those records, even though it doesn't get talked about the same way. I wonder what your perspective on it is.
Yeah, well, all right. The second record really comes out of a lot of the experiences that we went through after the first record, you know what I mean? And that was our debut record, of course, Mr. Hood, where we were kind of like still wet behind the ears, so to say, in the game. Like we, you know, business-wise, there's a lot of things we didn't know, and there's a lot of growing up you do. I think I was 18, 19 when I did the first record. So that's an age where, you know, it's real formative years where you're growing into manhood and whatnot. And it's like, you know, there's a lot of things about society in general that you find out and you know, come to grips with. So the next record was maybe 2 or 3 years after that. So all those new things that we were learning and, you know, a lot of the awareness that came out of being in the business went into that record. You know what I mean? So I think that's where you get a lot of the, you know, the little edge on it. It's like almost like a little bit of bitterness, I would say, you know, in a way, like kind of like, it's like a talk shitty kind of record, kind of like, yeah, well, whatever. Like to the industry, kind of like a little bit like, yeah, well, fuck y'all, we still gonna do our thing for me, you know.
I want to play a little bit of the intro to this album, if that's cool. Garbage Day, number 3.
We did one. We're gonna do our nigga another one. It sounds dope though.
Thanks, yo. Man, brings back a lot of memories.
It's a little more intense, yeah.
That joint. Like you see, it's in the same vein with the voices, but it's just a little more edgy there, right? A lot of that influence also came from the black exploitation films. You know, that's when the time when we just bumped into those, you know. And my brother Subroc, God bless, he really brought a lot of this material to me. Like, yo, this movie is crazy. You know, it was Sweetback's badass song. That particular film. Yeah, Melvin Van Peebles joint. He brought that, and that kind of set the tone for this record. You know, subtly, but that was kind of the whole blaxploitation thing, and then it spun into, you know, the whole record, Black Bastards.
Right, and the theme of a lot of those movies is revenge. It's like somebody gets wronged, and then they think that they're left for dead, and then they come back and, you know, they seek revenge.
Yeah, and they end up being, in those films, the underdog or whoever was the guy who you probably didn't normally make it in Hollywood or didn't make it in those movies end up being the hero. So it was cool to see for a change, you know, those type of themed films, you know what I'm saying? And the time when they were filmed and the texture of the sound was real memorable, you know what I mean?
And there's also like a poetry record that is used throughout this album too, from one of the last poets.
Yeah, that's right.
The Blue Gorilla.
Yeah, the Blue Gorilla, Gillen Kane. It's a real interesting record, yeah.
Now, let me just play one short piece of the single from this, because we want to get through this part. But, you know, this is your radio single, and this is how it starts.
He was a nigga yesterday. He's a nigga today. And he's gonna be a nigga tomorrow.
Thanks. Yeah, good thanks.
So that's you and Subroc, your brother.
Yeah, that's my brother, my partner, Sub. Yeah, that record is a fun record again, you know. But that's when he started coming more into the vocal part. You know what I mean? Sub was nice, like, you know, he brought my skills up. You know what I mean? He started doing styles. I'm like, dad, kid, you know, it's always good when you got a partner to kind of reflect off. You know, it brings more out of the duet, out of the group when, you know, you got a good partner like that.
So you guys are sharing production and vocal duties at this point?
Yeah, at that point, yeah, it took a lot of weight off me, you know, 'cause at this point on this record, the third member of the group, Onyx, who was on the first record, he kind of left the group at this point. So the vocals was kind of on me, but then he just took the play like, bow, I'm ready, caught wreck.
This record, like I said, didn't come out when it was supposed to come out in 93, 94. There was a controversy that those who follow hip-hop probably are familiar with that caused this album not to come out. what do you want to say in retrospect of all that, if anything?
Well, I don't know. The controversy, there was a couple of different things that was going on, and some of the things was behind the scenes, some of the things was more upfront, you know, but it all kind of culminated into the agreement that we had with the label to be severed, you know. It was kind of mutually agreed, you know what I mean, that we just, you know, it was kind of conflict of interest and like creative differences kind of thing, you know. So then that's really what led to, you know, the record being shelved, as they say, or what have you. But, you know, to me, it's no big deal. It's like a process that, you know, it happens in the game where, you know, relationships come to a point where you split and then you do something else. You know, everybody grows and, you know, so it's that kind of thing. We just got to me, we just got too big and too outspoken for the situation. You know?
Yeah, because the original artwork to this, and it's been reissued since with the original artwork, but it's the character, the symbol KMD, which is the quote-unquote Sambo character.
The Sambo face, you know, drawn like, you know, drawn out, but then with the like the no sign, like the no smoking or no,
right,
you know,
with the slash,
yeah, which will represent the ending of any stereotype or any kind of, you know, any type of false representation of anything really, of any race or any people or anything that's falsely represented. End of that. That was the logo, you know. And then we took it a step further with the Black Bastard cover, and made it to it. Okay, now we got this character on a hangman's noose, so we're hanging the character, which represents the same thing. It's the ending or the deading of that stereotype. You know what I mean? At the same time, it represents like the hangman game, like where letters are missing out of the. So it's like a puzzle, you know what I mean? So the whole record's like a puzzle, but at the same time, still with the message of no more stereotypes. You know what I'm saying? So I guess it was a little bit maybe too. I don't even know. I can't even look at it from their point of view to think what the reason was why they couldn't.
Well, it
handle
seems like it was
that.
misinterpreted, or whoever decided they were offended by it, or it was too controversial, misinterpreted the meaning of all that.
Yeah, but then you know what? At the same time, we had records out on the same label, like Cop Killer, Ice-T shit, and like there was a lot of controversial records at that time. I think it was more like, okay, is this product marketable? Can we sell this? You know what I mean? Because if they found a way to sell it, it wouldn't have been a problem. There was even some rock groups on there. I forget the name of the rock group. They had something the same year. They had a cover with like a cross with like a Jesus Christ with a goat head, and was real bugged out that maybe some people might see as offensive, or it had blood, all kind of looking crazy. But you know, they're selling millions of records at the time, so it wasn't as offensive as you know. So like I say, it's a lot of behind the scenes things that go on with this thing. They didn't have a front story that, you know, as the main story, as in everything they do. Even nowadays, you know, there's always a front story, but there's also a backstory, the real story, you know what I mean? Happens a lot in politics, it happens a lot in, you know, in how this world is run in general. These, you know, when anytime there's money involved and a lot of, you know, it tends to be that way, you know what I'm saying?
So KMD gets dropped from Elektra, this album doesn't come out, and then, you know, something obviously even more tragic happens, your brother passes away. How did you cope with that? What got you through this time in your life?
Yeah, actually, how it happened was we almost finished. We was just about done with the record, you know, and then the accident happened. You know what I'm saying? Where Sub lost his life and whatnot. God bless. And then I finished the record. You know, I still went ahead and finished the record despite, you know, because there only was a little bit more to do. So, you know, just for the. I mean, I'm going to finish it. One of us is going to finish it anyway. If it happened to me, he would have finished it. You know what I'm saying? You know, but then that's when they decided to sever the agreement with us. You know what I'm saying? Like in that order kind of thing. So, I mean, a lot of things were going on at that time, you know. So the way I dealt with it, I just kept it moving. You know what I mean? At the time, it just seemed like another thing, another obstacle to kind of like maneuver around. Or, you know, I had. you know, I had my mother and everybody. I had to like kind of be the one to be strong at the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm the oldest out of all of us. He's my brother, younger than me, one younger. So I had to kind of like just take the reins at that point. I couldn't really think about it too much, you know, especially with the whole thing with the deal being different, you know, had to kind of like regroup and figure things out. So the way I dealt with it, just like how we deal with it, like keep it moving, you know what I mean?